Almost don't want to turn it off. Almost don't want to turn it off. But hey, welcome in. It is week 3, and thanks for joining the SUPM Fantasy Football Podcast. We're here with the Fantasy Lounge, joined by Dave, Adam, and Bruni. How y'all doing today?
Doing well, sir.
We're good. Just in the middle of crafting my Sunday morning underdog pick'em lineup. So we're going to see how I can get this going so far. See if I can hit this week.
Hey, underdog,
feeling good,
I
feeling
really
right.
need you to work on that Ohio authorization for pick'ems. The sooner you do that, the better off I'm going to be. Bruni, how about you, bud?
Yeah, feeling good, feeling great. Get my lineups going here. Got some picks in. It's week 3. Let's ride.
I love it. I love it. All right. Hey, Sam, I hear you. And let's get into that just a little bit before we get into the start sits. Look, we're 2 weeks in. How many of us on here have at least one team that you think should be a competitor but is 0-2? Anybody? Anybody got an 0-2 team? Adam's like, no, I'm 2-0 everywhere.
I'm not 2-0 ever. Oh, I do have one 0-2 team, but I lost by 2 last week to the highest score.
I don't know if this is you or not. You're looking at an 0-2 team, but look, I had a squad last year that started 0-5 and made the playoffs. Okay, so don't panic. 0-2 is not an unrecoverable kind of thing. But what kind of advice do y'all have for folks that are starting 0-2 that think they should be a competitor in their league?
I would get a second opinion because sometimes we can be pretty biased. And so you can DM us. We'll give you the unfiltered, your team sucks, so your team's okay. But, yeah, sometimes we think, it's really good. And it's not. I've gotten a few of those like, hey, rate my team. And I'm like, do you want the honest one or no? So we're not always contenders. And if you're in the middle and you don't know, you're probably not.
I love it. Anybody else have something different than that?
Get to work. Start making some trades. Hit the waiver wire. Get aggressive. Start talking to people in your league, seeing what you can do to upgrade your roster. If you think it's so great, then you probably have some pieces that you might be able to leverage for some better value for the upcoming week. So start looking at some upcoming matchups in weeks 4 and 5, 6, etc., and see what you can pull off. Like I said, try to make a trade. Get aggressive on waivers. Just make sure that you're still in the game. Just don't fade yourself.
Absolutely. It's one of those buy a win. Do you need to buy a win this week to stay in it? So don't be afraid to make moves like that. And Sam, we get it. A lot of people had Anthony Richardson, saw him score twice on the ground, and we're like, oh my God, this is a week winning type of performance from Anthony Richardson, goes out with a concussion. Then you go and you see Nick Chubb and that nasty, nasty knee injury, which actually turned out to look like it may just be a torn MCL and everything else is intact. Hey, I see that, Bruni, me as well, praying that that's the case. And then Justin Fields and the debacle that is the Chicago Bears, unfortunately, Bruni. But that's kind of the game I want to start with. Let's take a look at the Chicago Bears and the Kansas City Chiefs. And Bruni, on the Bears side, since you're the resident Chicago fan, are you willing and interested in starting any of these pieces, David, with the loss of David Montgomery? We've seen Roschon Johnson kind of step into a little bit of pass-catching role. Khalil Herbert hasn't really performed expectations. DJ Moore is a little underperforming, as well as Justin Fields. So who do you trust out of the Chicago Bears, if anybody, this week going up against Kansas City Chiefs?
I think it's still DJ Moore the most. I think just based off of where you drafted him and his upside in that offense, this is still an offense that only passed the ball 18 times last week. That's been the nagging case against them. They're being very bland, very boring. They're not even setting up Fields for direct runs. And at the same time, they're not passing the ball a lot. So the play calling's been, controversial from our side, from the fan side. But in the fantasy perspective, I mean, I have all these guys in my lineups everywhere. Like I still have Herbert in my lineup. DJ Moore, I trust the most, like you were asking. I have Roschon in some lineups in some deeper formats. I mean, I, like the rest of the fantasy community, am hurting. I lost Nick Chubb. I've lost David Montgomery. So I've got to pick up the pieces here. And if you've been listening to like our waiver wire show, I'm not someone that's going out and spending 80% of my FOB in weeks 1 and 2. Like, I'm just not going to do it. I'm disciplined. I'm going to trust my process throughout the season. So, I do have to kind of rough it out with some Roschon starts, with some Herbert starts. I did actually start Chase Claypool last week in a dire situation, and he came home with a touchdown. I'm not going to trust that again, and I don't believe I trust Darnell Mooney coming off of an injury and off of a limited week. I would feel kind of cornered if I had to start him. And of course, you still have to start Fields. Like, he's still going to be rated a top 10 fantasy QB. I mean, the potential fades are certainly Mooney and Claypool. And if you can afford to stay away from the running game, I would absolutely do it.
All right, Dave, how about the Kansas City side? Where do you stand? What wide receiver do we trust? Is it MVS? Is it Sky Moore? Is this the Tony breakout game? Do you go and pick up Justin Watson, who's really probably been the most consistent, even at 40% snaps for the Kansas City Chiefs, outside of obviously Travis Kelce, who's a smash start? So where are you going with the wide receiver room in Kansas City, and are you willing to start them over some other flex options?
No, there's so many receivers in the league that I would take over anything that Kansas City is putting out. And you might see a good week from Sky Moore, and then the next week might be MVS. And I'm just not playing the roulette that is the Kansas City Chiefs. Kadarius Toney's a game time decision, so he plays, and then you put him in your lineup, and then he gets hurt in the first play, and it's like I don't want to play that game. Rashee Rice will catch the touchdown when you play Sky Moore, and vice versa. So I'm out on them. Obviously Kelce, obviously Mahomes, and then the running backs. Pacheco is supposed to start today, so just little injury updates. They're saying he's probably good to go. So that is, you would be watching for CEH. If Pacheco were to miss time, CEH would be the play, even though that he's a sketchy one at best.
Awesome. Adam, anything to add on either side? Any player you're interested in that nobody's yet talked about?
No, I think we've hit most of the guys that we're going to be interested in this game. Again, I think Pacheco has a bounce back game this week. I think it's going to be a closer game than people are thinking, just because I think Fields is going to run more. They got to give him that shot. They got to trust him with his legs. So I think that this is a game where the Chiefs offense is going to have to try to keep the ball away from the Bears a little bit. So look for Pacheco and McKinnon maybe even to be heavily involved this weekend.
I love it. Now, Justin Fields is one guy I'm interested in at least talking to the owner about and possibly trading for right now, right? We saw a very similar thing with Justin Fields and Luke Getsy last year calling plays. It really took about 4 weeks before they finally said, you know what? We're rolling with the legs. We're just going to let him create and do his thing. And I think with the addition of DJ Moore and the addition of Roschon Johnson, they're kind of doing that same approach. Hey, let's see if we can get Justin Fields instilled in what we want our offense to be, and let's see if it works. And I think the first 2 weeks we've seen it not really work. This week going up against Kansas City Chiefs, kind of a similar situation to what we saw last season in week 5 against the Minnesota Vikings, right? A high-powered offense. And they finally said, Justin Fields, go out there and do your thing, man. And we saw him explode and have one of the better games to really kickstart his season for the remainder of the year. And I think this could be that game for Justin Fields. So I'm going to go see what the owner's interested in. If they're still asking high value, I'm probably holding back. But if I can get him at a little bit of a discount, that's probably a route I am willing to go down. All right, let's move on to the next game of the week that we want to talk about. It's going to be the Atlanta Falcons and the Detroit Lions. Ooh. All right, Sam, got a question before we move on from this game. Hey, do we trust the Bears to look at Roschon? Hey, he's looked really good. Is he going to start to see more snaps now? What do you guys think? Adam, let's start with you.
I think he's a guy who everybody was high on early on. He's a guy who's been producing week in and week out. I think that you really are expecting the Bears to go with where they're getting production, because this is a Bears team right now starved for any sort of offensive production, starved for any sort of good news. And it feels like that has to involve Roschon Johnson right now, because he just looks better and fresher than Khalil Herbert does at this point in time.
I love it. Bernie, how about you?
True value on third down. He is the pass blocking running back of the two, one of the highest graded pass blockers at the running back position coming out of this draft. I'm trying to find right now if Donta Foreman is active. I'm going to assume that he's probably not. So yeah, continue to fire him up And again, like you may have some better options in some leagues, but I'm starting him in some deeper formats, like my IDP leagues where I have deeper rosters, or like those teams where you have like three flex spots in super flex. He's definitely in some of those lineups for me. So I have some trust in him for sure.
So Dave, riddle me this. Am I crazy? I currently have Roschon Johnson starting over Miles Sanders going up against the Seattle Seahawks. Am I crazy for that move? Or is that kind of where we think we could see Roschon Johnson this week?
I'm not there yet, so I wouldn't call it crazy, but that's definitely like it's fun if you look at some of the projections. So I was gonna post some of those because I'm looking at like one of the platforms has like Kareem Hunt for like MFL has Kareem Hunt projected like 14 points, and then they have like 3 points or 4 points on sleeper, and then Roschon Johnson same way. So like I know everyone's super excited and they want to be like the first one to get it right with Roschon Johnson. I probably need to see it before I go and put him in over Miles Sanders, just because I do have Miles Sanders higher. I currently have Sanders at 16, and I got Roschon and Herbert together 32 and 33.
I think one thing you got to consider with Roschon Johnson, though, is he's evading tacklers early and he's running free early. He had 30 yards before contact last weekend and more snaps. He's already at a 42% snap share. So he's only got 18% to go to swap places with Khalil Herbert. So the flip can happen very easily, and you're not going to see a lot there. The only thing he has to do is he has to do a little bit better, getting yards after contact. But if he's averaging 7.5 yards before contact, he's going to be golden. And he did that on just 4 attempts last week. He's going to get more involved, and he has to get more involved.
I think the big thing for me here, Brad, is what's your record? Like if you're in a good position and you feel like, what is it?
I'm 2-0.
I feel like you can take a chance, like especially if you have a tougher opponent. I'll chase the upside there. I just don't see a ton of upside in Miles Sanders, who's also going to have Chuba Hubbard taking the ball out of his hand. He's looked a lot more fresh, had a little bit more of a spry, a little bit more of a jump behind that offensive line. So I think that they're very similar situations. I don't think that's a bad way to chase some upside in a game where I could also expect more points. I don't expect the Carolina offense to consistently stay on the field with Andy Dalton under center. So I think you're onto something there.
And that's where I'm at. So Roschon has been kind of the pass catcher out of that backfield. I expect them to be down quick and early, which means he may see more playing time and more snaps. And Miles Sanders, I only have Roschon one spot ahead of Miles Sanders right now. 27-28, Roschon and Miles Sanders. I'm very low on Miles Sanders for a lot of the stuff that you're talking about, Bruni, where, hey, look, I don't expect this offense to look great with Andy Dalton. Not to mention Seattle has been very, very good against the run up to this point. And Miles Sanders hasn't really come to fruition. He's gotten a lot of the volume, don't get me wrong, but the efficiency is just not there, and I don't expect it to be there again this week with the Seattle Seahawks. So, hey, I'm rolling Roschon. We'll see what happens. All right, let's move on to the Atlanta Falcons and the Detroit Lions. Next game on the slate we want to cover. And look, I'm going to take my shot first here before I kick it to y'all. This is the Drake London game. I think Drake London is going to have a monster game. I know he went 6 for 7, 60-something yards and a touchdown last week. I have him as a top 10 wide receiver this week. That's crazy. I get it. But I just see a situation where the Detroit Lions are going to run the score up. There's no Kirby Joseph in that game to cover the deep safety ball. And I think Drake London has an absolute monster game against the Detroit Lions this week with a potential, I'm going to call it an upset, even though Atlanta is 2-0. Detroit is currently favored in this game by 3, but I think Atlanta could possibly come out and squeak out with the run. Detroit is the 8th worst against the wide receiver position this week, so I just think it's a monster game for him. Am I crazy to think Drake London could be top 10 this week, Adam?
I don't disagree. That Atlanta offense makes me very worried because it all rests on the arm. The passing guys rest on the arm of Desmond Ridder, who, even in college, we saw him against top tier competition, really struggled. I just think back to that college football playoff game where he got absolutely demolished against a high quality opponent. You know, Cincinnati came in with all these high hopes, and he was just made to look like he didn't belong on the same field. And that entire Cincinnati team was as well. So I like that Drake London got more involved last week, and I think he has to be more involved long term. Top 10 just feels like a stretch. He's in a bunch. I have him in lineups this week, though, but mostly in the flex where I'm riding out an injury or I'm looking for an upside play. I'm not slating him as a building block piece right now yet.
Bruni?
I think he hit it on the head there. You really like what you're going to get out of him this week. It may be very similar to last week, but with this offense just not passing the ball with high volume, you know, in some more shallower leagues, like a 10-team league, I could still see him on your bench. This is the 1 week I get to actually start Gardner Minshew, and I'm going to start Gardner Minshew over Desmond Ridder. And that's just because even though Desmond Ridder has a better matchup, I know what I'm getting out of Minshew, who was very effective last week, went 19 for 23 in about half of the game or so, and has experience with his head coach. So I'm going to roll that direction. I think that's kind of a good comparison. Obviously, Minshew has a tougher matchup with the Ravens, but again, Desmond really raw, could also steal one with his legs. We saw him rush one in last week, and you never really know in that red zone when they get down there where the ball is going to go. You're hoping for Desmond Ridder, but Kyle Pitts is going to need a touchdown. Both of those running backs are going to be heavily included. I like the take. I like the boldness, but I'm going to say outside the top 10 this week.
All right. And Dave, let's move away from Drake London. Let's talk about some of the other pieces that guys may be thinking about starting. One in Tyler Algier, a backup running back to Bijan, who is absolutely showing out right now. Is he the guy? Is he a guy that you could trust to get in the flex? And if so, who are you kind of starting him over? Where is he in your rankings this week?
As soon as I got my wide receiver rankings pulled up, we're going to pivot to running backs. So Algier is he's in the back end of the RB2s for me. You look at some of the guys with some bad matchups, like Rachaad White, I'd start over him. And a guy that I'm fading this week is DeAndre Swift. I think Swift is a guy you can still play, but Tampa Bay, Kenneth Gainwell returning. The coach is talking about how his role is going to change every week. I'm not saying you should cut DeAndre Swift or get him out of your lineup, but I got him at RB24 when others, Brad probably has him at RB4, maybe 5. But I think Algier is someone that you should play. That they're trying to do ball control offense. They're trying to win the time of possession. They're not trying to put Desmond Ridder, in a position where he's got to, he has to win the game for him. And so Algier is getting just as many touches as Bijan Robinson. And, I know we only have 2 weeks to go off of, but we saw goal line touches go to him. And when they did get a lead, they wanted to grind the clock out. It was Algier. So I think Algier's still a top 20 play this week.
Love it. All right, let's move.
Hold on. Let's come back to one thing that he said. Robinson is out touching Algier by quite a bit still, and it's through the passing game work. He's got 10 more touches through the passing game, and Algier has 2 more rushes right now. So Algier is getting that Russian work.
So the difference is 8.
8.
Yeah.
Sorry. 8 versus 10.
I thought you made it sound like
it's a big
2.
number. It's a big number over 2 weeks. It's a big number over 2 weeks. And Algier, even though they were up, saw his snap share go down. He was down to 44% snap share from 56% in week 1. Well, Bijan went from 63 to 72, and Bijan is the focal point of that offense. Algier is going to continue to get work, but Robinson is so heavily involved that you are going to start to worry that at some point Algier might start to lose work to someone like Cordarrelle Patterson.
Well, it's game script too. The first week they were ahead and grinding the clock out, so you saw more Algier. Right. And then last week it was a more competitive game, and you saw more Bijan Robinson. So yeah, 4 touches a week. I'm still like Algier until he gets less than what these other guys are getting, because he's still almost getting 15 touches is a lot for any running back.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure. For sure.
All right. So before we get to the question on the screen, I don't want to forget about the Detroit Lions and kind of where we're at there. Jared Goff, guys are going to play. So a couple questions, right? Jahmyr Gibbs and just the explosion on Twitter and in the multiverse of fantasy football about, oh my God, this guy is so awesome. And yet we see the same exact utilization as what we saw with DeAndre Swift last year with them and the year before under Dan Campbell. Now we're getting some coach speak. Oh, well, now, David Montgomery's doubtful. We're going to change he's going to get more touches. He's going to be the focal point, blah, 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 blah. I have not seen that yet. Am I crazy for thinking I'm not buying into this? Craig Reynolds is going to be the guy that gets to carry the ball in between the tackles, and Jahmyr Gibbs is going to get to do his thing, kind of the same role that we've seen through the first 2 weeks. So the question is not, do you start Jahmyr Gibbs? Everybody's starting Jahmyr Gibbs. The question is, what are the realistic expectations that we are going to be getting out of him this week? Dave, let's start with you.
I have him right outside of my top 12. So I have him right there at 13. I think you do see an increase. I don't think you're going to see 90% touches. They've never really done that with any of their backs. And so, but I do think you see him get more involved. And, last week they didn't involve him that much and they lost. And so losing does seem to, that tends to put some pressure on to make moves. And Amon-Ra St. Brown might be limited as well.
Yep. All right. Bruni, Adam, anything different? Do you think he stays the same? Do you think he starts to peak up now? Where are you guys at with Gibbs?
He only played 48% of the snaps last week, even with Montgomery leaving the game. They still included Craig Reynolds a bit. Kabinda, whoever that is, Jason Kabinda, if anyone's got a pulse on that guy, he played 8% of the snaps. So I don't necessarily see him getting, like 25 touches in this game. I don't think it's going to be some insane hyperactivity from his end, but I do believe that he's going to be heavily involved in the passing game continuously, definitely until Jameson gets back. David Montgomery being out gives him a bump, but I don't see him taking like those inside zone type of carries. Like, they're still going to try to be creative with him, get him in motion, and get him to be able to, get outside to get on the edge. That's where he's going to be, most productive. At his size and his stature, I mean, you can still tell that they want somebody like a David Montgomery to be carrying that ball up the middle of the field and being that red zone threat. So don't be surprised if Craig Reynolds steals a red zone touchdown today, but Jahmyr Gibbs still has a very productive day and is a beneficial start in fantasy.
Yep, love it. All right, so just like I pivoted on Dave, Adam, I'm going to pivot on you. Is Josh Reynolds worthy of a flex play after his big game last week?
Yes, he is. Josh Reynolds has consistent chemistry with Jared Goff. Week after week, year after year, Josh Reynolds just seems to stick around wherever Jared Goff is, and he's a reliable option for Goff. The thing that was always the question in Detroit was who was going to be that second option in this offense from the receiver slot. We like Sam Laporta, but Sam Laporta isn't a receiver. Josh Reynolds is a good receiver. He's a professional receiver. He's like a poor man's Robert Woods. He's going to get open. He's going to do what he's supposed to do, and you can get him all over the field. Throw him the ball, he's going to catch it. So it's really nice to have a guy like him in there. And until Jameson Williams comes back, and if Jameson Williams is anything worthwhile when he comes back, which still remains to be seen, Josh Reynolds is a flexible start week in and week out on this team. But I think this Detroit team is a candidate to make a trade here. We have two big-name receivers who are good and talented on expiring deals, and their teams have made it clear they have no interest in re-signing them currently. So if the Bengals lose this week and the Bengals are struggling, Detroit needs to call about T. Higgins, because the Bengals also just signed A.J. McCarron to their practice squad. A.J. McCarron isn't coming onto a practice squad because you feel confident about Joe Burrow's ability to stay in games and make it through a part of the season. The Bengals might be on the verge of shutting Burrow down for an extended period of time and just taking this season as an L and moving on to the next, which means you're stripping it down and getting what you can for guys like T. Higgins. Similarly, in Tampa, Mike Evans should also be on the move.
All right, so that's a great segue into this next question. You started talking about T. Higgins and the Cincinnati Bengals. So would you rather start Joe Burrow with that lingering calf injury up against the Los Angeles Rams or Trevor Lawrence who is really, from a fantasy perspective, kind of disappointed through 2 weeks, up against the Houston Texans. Bruni.
I'm easily going with Lawrence here, not knowing what the status is for Joe Burrow on Monday Night Football. I think that's the big factor here, is that you got a guy who's playing on Sunday versus a guy who's playing on Monday. Unfortunately, even with 2 Monday night games, you're going to be stuck in this dilemma with these 2 players. So, yeah, I easily go Lawrence here. I think he can have a bounce back week. That game last week was a bit peculiar, I felt, but he still has a lot of talent around him, a lot of really reliable targets. And Ridley, Christian Kirk bounced back in week 2. A lot of us still like Evan Ingram to be productive, and they got a good offense. I like their running backs too, so I think that's a good bounce back spot for the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yeah, I 100% agree. If you go back and watch that game, there were 2 or 3 touchdowns that were just barely missed for Trevor Lawrence and the Jacksonville Jaguars going up against Kansas City Chiefs. So, Dave, where are you at? I know for me, even if it was 2 1 o'clock games, I'm still leaning Trevor Lawrence regardless here. But, Dave, where are you at between these 2?
Yeah, this one's easy, Lawrence. Next question.
All right, Adam?
And just one quick thing to add. The big thing with Lawrence is he's running more. He's running like he ran in college. He's getting 5 to 7 carries a game, running for 20 plus yards a game. And he played what is a tough Kansas City defense that got their leader back with the return of Frank Clark.
All right.
Or Chris Jones, not Frank Clark.
Let's move on to the running back position. We got new incumbent starting running back for the Cleveland Browns in Jerome Ford. Showed out, had a nice 70-yard touchdown run, kind of bounced it to the outside last week after Nick Chubb's injury, up against the workhorse himself, James Conner, for the Arizona Cardinals. So who are we starting this week, Dave?
I still have Conner. It's pretty close. I got Ford right there at 25. Titans are an extremely stingy defense. I know people are excited about Ford. They spent all their money, and they're going to throw him in the lineup. It could be like a situation like Josh Kelly. Everyone was super excited about Josh Kelly last week. Who'd he play? Tennessee Titans. They're a tough defense. They're a funnel defense. They're going to try to stop the run and force you to pass. And if Ford breaks one, I'm going to be wrong. But that's where I'm at. It's nothing to do with Kareem Hunt. I just think it's a really tough defense.
Yep. Adam?
Right there with Dave. I just think Jerome Ford, yes, he's the big name. He's the flashy name. But when you lose a guy to injury like that, you get some extra emotions. They know what they're looking at today. The defense is going to be ready for him. Mike Vrabel is no slouch on the defensive side of the ball. And James Conner, in week 1 even, was getting more involved in the passing game and somehow didn't get involved last week. Conner is just reliable, productive, and he's the second best player in that offense right now in Arizona behind Hollywood Brown.
Yep. And Bruni?
No, I'm going to disagree here. I'm going to be the odd man out. I'm going to go with Ford. Based off of that same play, I think that both defenses are very good. The Dallas Cowboys, I don't know about your guys' leagues or your fantasy leagues, but Dallas Cowboys are the highest scoring team defense in any of mine. They're tied with the league high for sacks. They've been getting to the quarterback. I don't know, man. I feel like the Cardinals are going to have trouble staying on the field this week. I think that the offense is a little bit better for Cleveland in general. I'm certainly not on the Deshaun Watson hype train. He's looked absolutely terrible, but given their offensive line, what they're good at is running the ball. And I think that they're going to be on the field a bit longer. They're going to have a bit more time of possession than the Cardinals this week. So I will go with Ford there. I agree it's close, but I don't like the Dallas Cowboys defense any better than the Titans.
Yeah, I got Jerome Ford just a couple spots above James Conner. Mainly defensive matchups are driving that. So, all right, let's move on to the next question here. We got Christian Watson and Aaron, or not question, but kind of a status update. And if you're not paying attention, make sure you go follow at SGPN Football Doc. Our in-house doc, Sebastian, he's got all of your injury news and updates. And it looks like Aaron Jones and Christian Watson are both inactive for this week. So adjust your lineups appropriate. So A.J. Dillon, does he move up your rankings? Romeo Dobbs, Jaden Reed, some of those guys, are they moving up your rankings, or are they kind of rock steady for the time being? For me, I kind of had this sprinkled into the rankings already, so my guys are not moving. But how about y'all right now?
I'm just avoiding AJ Dillon. AJ Dillon just feels like a guy who had so much promise and so much hype, but he just never delivers. Even when he sees an increased workload, he just can't make things happen. Aaron Jones is the guy that makes that offense go. I was concerned about this Packers offense in preseason, and I remain concerned about this Packers offense moving into the season because they're winning games, but the offense isn't productive from a fantasy standpoint.
So with all that being said, we know Christian Watson is out. We know Aaron Jones is out. So out of these three, who are you starting in your flex? Romeo Doubs, Elijah Moore, or Jahan Dotson? Let's start with Dave.
I'm going with Dobbs.
Bruni?
Easy.
All right. Adam?
I'm going Dotson.
Yeah, easy
That's where
Dotson.
I'm
That's
at.
it. Yeah.
Dotson's playing the Bills. He's just the Bills are good on defense, but they're going to give up lots of yardage. A shifty receiver is the kind of receiver that gives them trouble. So look for Dotson to pick up lots of chunks of yardage throughout the game. They'll keep him out of the red zone, but they're going to move the ball up and down the field, and they're going to get their yards. And he's going to draw the second cornerback for the Bills, which is Ben Benford. And Benford's good in a dog, but he's not going to contain him from getting yards. He's going to contain him from taking the top off the defense with a big play, though.
Yeah, and I'm on Dotson's side here, but Elijah Moore, I just want to tell the dude is getting targets. I think he's got 9 targets and 7 targets through 2 weeks. It's just they're targets from Deshaun Watson, which is 2 years ago would be really, really good targets, but right now they are really, really bad targets. The average depth of target is super low. The completion percentage is not good. He has not looked good at all. So I think until you see the improvement from Deshaun Watson in full point PPR leagues, maybe I'd be a little bit more inclined to start Elijah Moore because eventually he's going to start catching some of those targets. But until that offense starts clicking, I think he's a for sure sit, especially when you've got Dobbs and Dotson available.
Something to watch in the Buffalo-Washington game. Yeah, the last 2 questions got the Browns bumps. But the Buffalo Bills and Washington game, they're expecting 2 to 4 inches of rain. Something to keep an eye on for all of your, whether it's fantasy.
What game was that? Sorry,
betting. Washington and
the
Buffalo.
Bills. Gotcha. Yeah. Down in DC, it's pouring rain here.
Yep.
They did say the field looked great though in the pregame.
It's a terrible field. It's an awful field. No one ever wants to play there.
They said it looked good for it just having been dumped a tropical storm on it. This is from the guys on the ground.
It's not good dry, so it's all good. But
all right, let's move on to another Starsick question around Puka Nacua or Jordan Addison. I almost said Jordan.
Come on, guys.
Come on. Sure why. But
as long as Puka is healthy, come on now.
You got 20 targets, 15 targets. Like to me, it's not even a question. I'm starting Puka over Jordan Addison. Does anybody see this differently?
It's a great matchup for Addison, but come on. Puka has been perfect, literally perfect. He's broken receiver records through the first 2 games ever played. So, keeping it simple here, not blinking.
Yep, we got some
active
news.
I think the reason why I might lean Addison here is because he has the big play potential. He isn't the number 1 option, and his snap share has increased week 1 to week 2. And we all thought he was going to overtake KJ Osborne at some point, and it could be here in week 3 if he gets up around that 80% snap share and he's getting that work and they're targeting him. He's done all of this with 5 and 6 targets respectively. If he can get that up to 9 to 12, you got to play Jordan Addison. I'm struggling to not play both of them in this situation. Who are your 2 starting wide receivers if you're having to pick between these guys? And can we talk about having both of those guys in your lineup?
Yep. Yeah, I like both of them as options, but it's definitely Puka over Addison. But let's move into that game. That's a pretty big game between the Los Angeles Chargers and the Minnesota Vikings. Do we see any player really in this game? Your big names, Jordan Addison, obviously Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson, Alexander. Really, the question mark I guess I have is around the running backs for these 2 teams. Are you willing to start Joshua Kelly and Alexander Madison in a RB spot or a flex spot in week 3? Dave.
Yes. The Chargers cannot stop the run. The Chargers are a terrible defense. And this is like, we look at the Minnesota running game, and I get it. I was higher on Madison coming in, but Philadelphia and Tampa Bay, those are terrible, terrible defenses to play against. Madison is not going to be a top 12 running back this week. I don't think that's a hot take, but I think he's going to be a top 24 play. Cam Akers will get worked in, but he just showed up. So I do think they get Madison going, and he had all the stuff going on with Madison this weekend. I think they do, but like, I think you can play him, and Josh Kelly is a smash. I'm really high on Josh Kelly this week.
Yeah, I think it's a huge bounce back game. Minnesota's allowed the 3rd most rushing yards to the running back position. Both of these teams are averaging almost 29 points a game, almost 30 points a game. I think it's a high scoring affair where Joshua Kelly's going to have some scoring opportunities, and he's going to look more like his week 1 self from an efficiency standpoint. So let's move on to the next question here. Kyle Pitts or Hunter Henry? From Sam. Adam, let's go to you. We haven't heard from you in a while.
It's Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts is just much better, has less, even with Drake London, has less target competition than Hunter Henry does. That New England offense has Mike Gesicki, has Kendrick Bourne, has Juju Smith-Schuster, who has been a ghost through the first couple weeks. There's just less options in Atlanta. It's Bijan, Kyle, and Drake, and nobody else is really relevant in the passing game. Whereas New England, any of those guys could go off in a given week.
I'm going to split it in half and then make you all break the tie, because I'm going Hunter Henry. Like, it's 2 weeks in a row. He's been the guy for Mac Jones, and it ain't even close. Kendrick Bourne outside of week 1 was non-existent, really. We saw his snaps drop, his targets drop last week because, like we talked about in the week 1 show, Dave and I, Kendrick Bourne played all of his snaps outside in week 1, or a large majority of them. And when Devontae Parker came back, he moved off the field. Juju, like you said, non-existent. Mike Gesicki shouldn't even be in the conversation because he's not being looked at. Hunter Henry is the guy, as crazy as that is to say, in New England right now. So Hunter Henry, start him over Kyle Pitts for me. So you got 1 for 1. So Dave, let's go to you. Are you on the Pitts or the Henry side?
They're both right there, 9 and 10. And it's so crazy that Pitts is even having this conversation because he's by far the better talent. But like, there's an argument to start, Taysom Hill over him this week. There's a lot of tight ends because, I mean, it's not just like Kyle Pitts has not been good the last 2 weeks. He's not been good the last 12. And he's not getting the targets or anything that shows you that there's light at the end of the tunnel. And so I'm fine with starting Henry. It is a tough matchup against the Jets. I think they give Mac Jones some fits today. But, I'll stay on the fence with this one, but I will go with my rankings and say Kyle Pitts 1 spot ahead of Hunter Henry.
All right. Bernie?
I feel dirty about it, but I'll go with Henry. It's just because of what I've seen in the matchup. I like the fact that Ritter gets the Lions. That Kyle Pitts gets the Lions with Desmond Ritter. I think that he could have some opportunities to score. I don't love their linebackers and Anzalone and Jack Campbell, at least as far as a coverage standpoint. So I think that he has the opportunity to maybe score this week, but both of these guys are boomer bust tight ends, unfortunately. And when it's Kyle Pitts you're considering, you'd hope that not be the case, where you'd probably drafted him in comparison to picking up Hunter Henry off the waiver wire, most likely. It's very tough, but I'm going to go with Hunter Henry. I'm going to say that he has more opportunity to score. And I believe they're playing the Jets this weekend. That's just going to be bad QB play from Wilson. They're going to get a little bit more or a few more opportunities this week.
Yeah, it's just the opportunities for me with Hunter Henry. He's getting targeted. Really, I believe he's the target leader for the New England Patriots through the first 2 weeks. So let's move on to the next question. Tony Jones Jr., the starting running back for the New Orleans Saints. Alvin Kamara, the last game of his suspension. Jamal Williams now out, but we see Kendre Miller coming in, rookie, but we saw a pretty big game from a touchdown perspective. Not very efficient on the ground, but 2 touchdowns versus a Zach Charbonnet who isn't getting second-round draft capital amounts of work. So where are we at in a full-point PPR? Tony Jones Jr. or Zach Charbonnet, Dave?
I'm going to go with Charbonnet.
Bernie?
I'm going to go with Jones. Charbonnet hasn't played more than 26% of the snaps through 2 games.
And Adam?
This is tough, but I'm going to go Charbonnet because Charbonnet has actually been involved, and I don't see Tony. It's hot. Exactly like you said. Taysom Hill's going to see some rushes and some running back work this week.
Could
right?
lead the team in rushing yards again.
Yeah, like that's the thing. It's like I can just see so many ways it goes wrong for Tony Jones. I know you'd be excited about him, but Kendre Miller back, Taysom Hill, but also they could run him into the ground because who cares? Alvin Kamara's back next week, but it does feel like it's going to be a Zach Charbonnet pick here. Charbonnet's just the consistent involvement is too much.
Yeah, and I'm going to go Charbonnet also, but it really has more to do with what I expect New Orleans to do, where they spent a 3rd-round draft pick on Kendre Miller. Tony Jones Jr. is flat from team to team, practice squad, elevated. I just don't see them saying, okay, hey, Tony Jones, you're the guy. No, well, maybe he's the inside the 5 guy, right? And might see a touchdown here or there, but I just don't think he's going to get the volume at all. So I'm going to go with the better offense and the better player, I believe, in Zach Charbonnet as well.
And if you want someone with some reliable work who's going to get some touchdown look, think about Latavius Murray. It's not a sexy name, but Latavius Murray is seeing rushing and passing work reliably for the Bills, and he appears to be the guy in the red zone. Latavius Murray, not fun. You're like, it's Latavius Murray. But he got 8 touches last week. If it's wet and rainy again this week, pump him up because he's going to get the work inside the red zone, and he's a better pass catcher than Damian Harris.
I would take Lat Murray over both of those guys. Charbonnet only played 12 snaps in week 1 and 19 snaps in week 2. I'm not sure where the upside here is. I mean, Tony Jones still played more snaps than him in week 2 than Charbonnet played in 2 total weeks. So, like, I don't think that Tony Jones is a great option, but between the two, I think he's clear and ahead, has more upside just being with his presence on the field. That's it.
I think there's a lot of unknown with both these players. I think that you can get a lot of different options that are better. I like Gus Bus. I like Gus Edwards with Justice Hill out a lot better. Zach Moss better.
Anytime Tutty today, Gus Edwards.
We talked about a lot of I have both those guys in late RB3 range, so I think you might be able to find something. Like Devon Achane's playing today. He's an interesting name if you looking for a home run hit. And so we don't know what Tony Jones is gonna look like. Like Adam said, you could end up seeing 20 touches. You could end up seeing 3 where it's Taysom Hill and Kendre Miller, and they pass the ball a whole lot. And I think that in game script, that Carolina is going to be down pretty early, and Seattle's going to be able to run the ball a lot, and you can see more Charbonnet with a positive game script, and that's really what I'm going with.
Yep. All right, let's move on to the next question here. We need 3 out of the 5. So Brian Robinson, Zach Moss, Rachaad White, Amari Cooper, and George Pickens. 3 out of the 5. So we're going to do this. I'm going to have all of you give me a name. So Adam, who's the top of your list out of these 5?
It's Brian Robinson because at the end of the day, the Bills struggle against the run. They're going to contain it most of the time, but Brian Robinson has looked explosive and has the ability to evade tackles and then make a cut and gain yardage, and he's getting more involved in the passing game. He's starting to look like a fringe RB1 in that offense. We all thought it was going to be Antonio Gibson, but Antonio Gibson does the thing that a lot of coaches hate, where he's dancing back and forth and never just getting yards up the field. Brian Robinson always just wants to get as many yards as possible, whether he has to hit somebody or just slip around them. But Brian Robinson.
All right, Bernie, who's your pick? B-Rob off the table.
I'll take Pickens. Pickens had 10 targets last week, still only had 4 catches, but he had 127 receiving yards and a touchdown, getting hyper-targeted with Deontay Johnson out. Great matchup up against the Raiders. They're talking about Jalen Warren's going to get more touches. I think it's going to be a big week or bounce back week for Najee and another solid production out of Pickens.
Yeah, the Raiders are not great. Not great at all. So, Dave, all right, George Pickens off the board, B-Rob off the board. Who is the last person to start out of Zach Moss, Rachaad White, or Amari Cooper?
Well, it is PPR, so I'm going to go with the receiver. Zach Moss, got Baltimore, plus it's PPR, so I'm going to go with Amari Cooper here. Rachaad White's got a terrible matchup against Philadelphia. Give you the Brown.
I love it because I was gonna peek in a little bit and say I'd start Amari Cooper over the other two if you didn't. So I love it. Brian Robinson, Amari Cooper, George Pickens. Hey, Lunchbox. Good luck this week. So let's
hold on. I need some help here because I'm sitting here sweating this. I need to pick between Marquise Brown, Zay Flowers, and George Pickens. And I can talk myself into any of them. But who do you guys think? Third receiver slot, PPR, 3 points for a receiving touchdown, 6 points if it's over 20 yards.
All right, 3, 2, 1. Everyone say name.
All right.
3, 2, 1. Pickens.
Hollywood.
Not
I don't
Hollywood.
know why I have love.
Why Hollywood?
I really don't. Look, Trayvon Diggs is out. Those corners
So
are going to
Stephon
shuffle
Gilmore.
around. It's going to be a high-scoring game. They're going to have to throw the ball. I get it. It's Josh Dobbs. Do you trust Josh Dobbs?
I say we're all wrong, and it's probably Zay Flowers, Adam.
God, I just
Yeah.
see. This is where I'm at. It's been whack-a-mole with these receivers in that third slot because it's been Metcalf and Addison are the clear 1 and 2, and then it's just whack-a-mole with the third between those guys and JSN chilling on the bench too. But he's clearly not with those other guys.
Yeah, that sucks that he isn't. But I think Zay Flowers here, I mean, like, I love the matchup for Pickens, but giving Flowers his flowers, if you will. I mean, you have OBJ out who is playing a fair amount of snaps. He played 92% and then 52% in week 2. Zay Flowers, 84 and 77%. I have to imagine he gets a little bump here. Like, I got to say, he's going to play at least 85% of the snaps. Pickens is probably in another situation like that, but I also see the Steelers running the ball. That's tough. I got to say it's between Zay and Pickens for me. I got to say that Hollywood's the odd man out, but I could make strong opinions or pushes for both of those two guys.
Yeah, I've just watched Stephon Gilmore struggle to cover good route runners for his entire career, and Hollywood's a good route runner, if nothing else.
Yeah, it's just will Dobbs have any time back there to actually get him the ball? Mm-hmm. Dallas is sitting a lot of players today. They have almost half of their offensive line are game time decisions. Zach Martin, Tyler Biadasz.
What's the spread?
Tyler Smith. I'm not sure the spread, but
12.5 according to PFF right now.
So they have Tyler Smith is in, Tyler Biadasz, the center, is game time decision. Zach Martin's game time decision. Tyron Smith is game time decision. So they might be, using this as a little bit of a bye week. So it could be an interesting game there, but I just think the defensive line is not sitting anybody. I'm very scared what kind of those targets look like for Marquise Brown. And then, I do like Zay Flowers a lot, but I'm sticking with Pickens.
Well, and that's the concern I have for Kenny Pickett and the Steelers is Max Crosby is going to be on Broderick Jones's side, and Broderick Jones has not looked good through 2 weeks. So if he's able to get pressure on Kenny Pickett the way that the San Francisco 49ers were able to get pressure, and I'm not comparing the defensive line by any shape of the imagination, but if Max Crosby can get some pressure on Pickett, he does not perform well when under pressure. So and you take that 70-yard touchdown, which I know you can do that with a lot of players. You pull that 70-yard touchdown. Pickens has a terrible game last week without that touchdown. So I just
like the targets.
Does he need that big play? That's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, I like the targets. I like the air yards, and I know
sure.
that's where I'm at.
Yep. All right, let's move on to the next one. Half-point PPR. We need one. We got a lot of names. So same thing. We're just going to do round robin, pick a name, and go. DeAndre Hopkins, Terry McLaurin, Rome Ford, Christian Kirk or DeAndre Swift? Let's go Bruni first.
Oh, on the spot. My God.
I think this is Brad's team.
No, it isn't.
Pick only one. I mean,
Looks
this
like-
has got to be like a 10-team league of some sort. Like, this is nuts. D Hop's banged up. I don't love Terry this week. I haven't loved what I've seen from Terry for the first three. We've talked about Jerome Ford having a tougher matchup. I think the answer is Christian Kirk here. I liked his bounce back week. He's someone that I've been high on all off season. I'll stay with Captain Kirk here.
All right, Dave.
Yeah, I'm gonna make it right. I was wrong last week about Christian Kirk. I'm gonna go Christian Kirk this week. I think just tough matchup for the other guys. And then just to circle back to the original question you had about if you're 0-2 and your team is good, if these are the lineup decisions that you're having to make every week, I know bye weeks are coming, so depth you still need it, but start trading up. Take some of these guys that you're questionable about in your lineup, stack them with other players, get players that you're gonna just set and forget, and so that's a way that you can make your team better too.
Yep. And Adam, who are you starting out of these five?
DeAndre Swift finally looked like what we were promised all those years in Detroit with his monster game last week. And coming off a monster game like that, I'm going to have a lot of trouble sitting a guy who on 29 touches went for 180 yards and a touchdown. I gotta put Swift in because that home run upside is there. The Bucs defense is solid, but the Eagles offense is for real, and they're trying to run Jalen Hurts a little less, except when they need it. It's just important. It's important to remember that he could bust, but it's your flex spot. It's your flex spot. You're looking for that home run upside, and Kirk, without Zay Jones, you feel good about, but Calvin Ridley and Evan Ingram feel like the 1 and 2 receiving options in Jacksonville. And we already talked about why we're off the other guys.
Yeah, as much as I want to be in your corner, Adam, and say DeAndre Swift because I have an absolute man crush on him and have for a while, I can't. The game script last week, they knew the Philadelphia Eagles, it was very clear that running the ball was how to win that game. They could do anything they wanted to on the ground against Minnesota Vikings, and I don't think that's going to be the game script this week against Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think they're going to have to throw the ball a little bit, and they're going to move away from that. Now we get Kenny Gainwell back, and that muddies the waters a little bit, but to me, it's DeAndre Swift is the top back in that backfield period. But with all of that being said, Christian Kirk, after a really bad week one where we saw his snaps down, he didn't really produce, came back and said, hey, do not, week one snap share article, you got to start this guy. This is a guy that is getting paid way too much money, is going to see snaps. He is the guy. And now Zay Jones is out as well. Christian Kirk is a smash play. Again, Jacksonville, if you go back and look at that game last week, they were really just a hair away from multiple touchdown passes from Trevor Lawrence. And I think was it 3?
Was 3. Calvin Ridley banged his head against the goalpost. Zay Jones
whole body.
Whole body. And Zay Jones had 2 where it would count it in college. Just didn't count.
Yep. Yeah. So I think Christian Kirk is the guy here. Hope that helps you out. Let's go one more. Raheem Mostert or Nico Collins? My goodness, the dude is on fire. Him and CJ Stroud are just broing it together every week. 140 some odd yards, I think, is what he had last week. And a follow-up to a really good week one. So can we expect more of the same against the Jacksonville Jaguars? Or do you roll with the just beast that is Raheem Mostert right now while he's healthy? Ride that horse as much as you can. Dave, where are you at here?
Yeah, Raheem Mostert, sell him while you can. He's not going to be an RB5. Sell him while you can. You might have missed your window if you don't do it by 1 o'clock. But you said it. Mo start.
I like that.
I like it. Adam.
I think Mostert probably has the most upside, but I'm going to go with Nico Collins here. I'm going to give him some love. He is playing with the quarterback who has thrown the 5th most passing yards through 2 weeks in CJ Stroud. Wow. Incredible. Actually, I mean the whole group: Tua Tagovailoa, Kirk Cousins, Matt Stafford, C.J. Stroud. Just how we dialed it up in the preseason. So yeah, I'll go down a little bit of a different path here. I'll say Devin Achane, plays a little bit of a nagging role today to Raheem Mostert, and I'll go Nico Collins.
All right, Adam.
I got to side with Bruni on this one. In that Jags-Texan games, this has the making of an old-fashioned AFC South shootout. We know we have, 10 years of history in the NFC South, but this, with that Jags offense firing on all cylinders and this Texans offense being able to play, and no Derek Stingley today, it feels like it's throw early, throw often, and big games all around for the receivers. I want a bunch of pieces of this game if I'm able to do it. And I just don't – I can't get excited about Raheem Mostert because he's always going to let you down. This feels like the letdown week for Raheem Mostert, and it is until it isn't. So maybe he'll have a good year and maybe he'll stay healthy. But Nico Collins is getting the production. Nico Collins has been a good upside, and it feels like a shootout. So give me Collins for the upside play in a flex slot.
Yeah, it's tough because Mostert is pretty much a start. When he's healthy, you start him. And it's been really that way for his career. While he was in San Francisco, when he was healthy, you could play him. It's when is he going to get hurt? I get that. But look, even with Waddle out, I understand it. There's no way I'm sitting Nico Collins right now. CJ Stroud is chucking it, and that offense is clicking from a moving the ball, creating yardage perspective. They're going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars, who I think this is a get-right game. We've talked about them a lot, but I think you see Jacksonville really get back on the tracks and just steamroll from a points perspective, which means CJ Stroud's going to be chucking the rock again. So I think it's a smash play for me in Nico Collins over Ricky.
Just a rankings question. I mean, how high are you guys on Nico Collins this week, or how low are you on Mostert? This one is like 100% to 0 on Fantasy Pro start set because Mostert's the top. Let me say where he's at. I'm pretty sure Mostert's in the top 12 ECR, and Nico Collins is like wide receiver 24.
But I think that's
but I don't trust their rankings. I mean, I don't trust their rankings, period. They're always burying somebody like a Nico Collins. And I don't even love Mostert's matchup up against Denver. Their defensive line and run stoppage has been pretty solid.
And that's the thing. You got to think about guys not realizing, yes, CJ Stroud's been great, but how good has the rest of that Texans offense been as well? And Nico Collins has been the guy for Houston week in and week out. We know that the rankings are slow to pivot sometime because the Fantasy Pros rankings are all about playing the game. How do I end up as high as possible in the end of season accuracy? You end up there by being the least off from ECR as possible. Yep. So a few people start their rankings, the ECR kind of sets, and everybody else just falls in steps because you don't want to fly against the ECR. And that's tough. That's challenging. And it makes it hard when you try to answer questions like these because people are going to say, well, this, and we're going to say, yeah, that's fine. But at the end of the day, we're weighing the pros. You asked us to weigh the pros and cons. I would start Nico Collins in the flex over Raheem Mostert in every one of my leagues.
I think the other thing too here is just the philosophies of the two teams. The Dolphins want to throw the ball. They want to get things in motion. Mostert is a reliable player to get usage up the middle of the field and just kind of take those burner plays. All right, let's burn one for 3 yards. Let's burn another short one for 4, right? And things like that. When you're comparing him to Nico Collins, the Houston Texans can't run the ball. Their offensive line is terrible. They can't get Dameon Pierce or Singletary going. They've needed to rely on the passing game, and that's why you're seeing 9+ targets for Robert Woods and Tank Dell and Nico Collins. So I'm also just leaning into that, narrative. This is going to be a passing team, at least for the near future, until they can really establish the run. And even when they do that, I think it just makes Nico Collins and the receivers better. Probably not so much Robert Woods and Tank Dell, but it definitely propels Nico Collins' potential production and opportunities.
Yeah, so I got Nico at wide receiver 17, and I have Mostert at RB 18. Now, those numbers don't obviously correlate 1-to-1, right? But If I am starting or making that decision, I'm going to roll with Nico Collins just because I think the game script and he is the alpha in that offense. There's nobody even challenging him. I know Schultz is getting some targets, and I know that Robert Woods is getting targets, but Nico is the guy there. And when you've got a guy who's top 5 in passing yards, that's something I'm willing to roll with right now versus a Raheem Mostert, who now we've got, the second game with Devon Achane. I just don't know if I trust what they're going to do with the backs. Not to mention he's a guy I'm trying to move from right now because Jeff Wilson will be coming back off IR here in a week. And then that really muddies the water. Well, now what do we trust? And it's just I'm kind of slowly moving off of Mostert right now. So
sneaky IDP pick. Start Bradley Chubb today. Nice little revenge game.
Ooh, I like it. All right, let's get one more question in for Sam before we get out of here. We've been going for an hour. Give us some time to set
Did we touch on the Pierce Algier question?
We did not.
We didn't, but it's Algier by a mile.
It's okay. Just making sure we're all aligned there because the Texans, as we said, the Texans aren't running the ball and he's not involved enough in the passing game. It's Algier. He has the reliable production right now, even with a dwindling snap share, and the Texans' run game is non-existent.
See,
they've had 2 really tough matchups. Baltimore and I forget the other one, but they really tough matchups.
Yeah, and we talked about this through 2 weeks. Dave and I mentioned this on the show the other day. Through 2 weeks, Dameon Pierce has 38 yards after contact. You know how many rushing yards he has?
12.
31.
I wasn't that far off.
In week 2, he had 31 rushing yards, but 38 yards after contact. It's
not good.
He's getting all of the volume. He is the guy. Like Tyler Algier, we just made a comment. We talked about him losing snaps as the year goes on, and now we're willing to start him over a guy who's getting all of the running back work, even though he's had a very poor first 2 weeks.
I think they need more explosion out of the backfield.
I think he could have a pretty decent game, to be honest, this week.
I think they need more explosion out of the backfield. If anything, I feel like with how bad their offensive line has been, they haven't been using Devin Singletary enough in the passing game. I'm hoping that they both get some usage back there in that very fashion because that's what they need. Like they need some chunk plays coming out of that backfield, and they're just not there. They're getting their production by driving the ball down the field, not from either of those 2 characters. So that's what they need, and they absolutely have to fix it. But until I see otherwise, I'm going to have to fade them.
Yeah, good luck, Shane. Hopefully that split down the middle really helped you out, bud. 2 and 2. So, all right, let's move on to the last question before we get out of here. Hey, what do we do and how do we feel about the starting quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts going into this week, Gardner Minshew? And I'm going to go right to you, Bruni, because you showed a little love for him earlier on in the show. So how comfortable are you with him as your QB2 in a super flex league?
I feel okay with it, but I'm starting to feel not as comfortable with it the more I realize that this game is actually being played in Baltimore and it's absolutely pouring rain here. So I may have to retract that statement because I guess I didn't think about that when we started talking about the Commanders game, and I was like, oh shit, wait, aren't the Ravens at home too? Like that's not good. Wait, they also play where I live. That's not great. I may have to backtrack that a little bit, but if you have them, it's kind of the week to start him, right? Like, I don't know how many more weeks you're going to be able to start him, given that you're going to see Anthony Richardson just take over the spot right when he comes back, not a moment's hesitation. So, I like him. I think, like I said, I think he's efficient with Steichen, but I don't know. This weather's kind of scaring me. It's not fun here right now.
The move there is go to the Richardson owner and say, hey, what's it going to take to get a 1 week rental out of it? If you need it, right? You hope that in Superflex League,
if you can get this smashed through in the next 56 minutes.
Hey, you know what? Just hand me Sky Moore for him or something, right?
Brad has done it.
Something. So, all right, Dave, how about you? Are you comfortable with Gardner Minshew as your QB2?
No. Baltimore is a little bit of a comfortable is a very he's a fringe, and there's some really bad quarterbacks this week. Like Jake Browning might be playing. You got Zach Wilson and Dobbs. That's pretty much all that I would have above Minshew. I like Minshew. He doesn't have the best weapons. and he's playing in rain, and you have he's got Michael Pittman. I do like Josh Downs hasn't done anything. Alec Pierce hasn't done anything. I think you can go with better options. I got Stafford above him. I got I Jordan Love above him. Like trying to get him inside my top 24, I just can't do it.
How about Jimmy G? Would you start Jimmy G over him?
He gets to play indoors. He gets to play indoors.
I would. I think those are the only 4 guys I have above him. Oh, actually, I got him above Andy Dalton. Sorry. So I got him at 28.
Sweet Jesus, boys.
All right, Adam. Let's let you close this out with Gardner Minshew. Looks like you got something to say.
I mean, I wouldn't start Jimmy G over him, and it's raining, it's miserable, and the problem is Gardner Minshew's value comes from his ability to throw the ball. You know, he's been a prolific passer throughout his career with decent weapons. He could do something with those Colts weapons if he's not playing in a monsoon. So I'm going to defer to Bruni here as our man on the ground in Baltimore and hedge a little bit and say I'm going to be out on him because if it's raining and miserable, you're not throwing the ball, and no amount of weapons is going to make that work. So I'd stay away from him. If you're a super flex, you might not have a better option. If you're 1 QB, you have some better options out there. Go grab one of those guys.
Based on the time that from what I'm reading here, is that the rain is going to slow down as the game goes on. So it's up to 70% up until kickoff. And then from there, it goes down to like 50 to 25 at like 2 p.m. So maybe he can rally in the second half. But I don't know. I think it's going to be a rough start. I'm definitely firing up the Ravens defense.
Yeah, typically speaking, rain itself is not going to change the game script all that much. It's the wind associated with it. So if there's some big winds there, or that stadium is kind of built in a way where there's a little bit of a tunnel, then I could see that being more of an effect. But I don't think the rain itself, unless it's like torrential downpour, obviously, I just don't know that it's going to change the game script all that much. So just take a look at the weather, pay attention to it, and make your lineup adjustment as possible, or as necessary. But like they said, 1 quarterback, there are other options out there on the waiver wire you could get on. All right. Any parting words of wisdom before we move on and wish everybody luck in week 3?
Good.
I'm going to ask you guys. I'm going to ask you guys what player ruins this touchdown parlay. Anytime touchdown. You can nod or shake your head. Gus Edwards.
Good.
Derrick Henry.
Good.
Travis Kelce.
Good.
All right,
you can plug it into Hall of Fame bets, and if you want, you can get half off with promo code SGPN.
My guy. All right, here are the rough 2, the big odd plays. Jake Ferguson.
Yeah, he's gonna ruin it.
Arizona, I don't know. Tony Jones Jr.
If they're inside the 5.
There you go.
Hey, there's at the 5, and Taysom Hill does it. Bruce can toss his phone out the window.
No, Taysom Hill's like my 4th highest exposed tight end.
I'll put Taysom Hill in that. Put Taysom Hill in that over Tony Jones.
That's too late.
I like it.
It's a no sweat bet. Also, you can go to DraftKings, sign up with promo code SGP.
Get her done. All right, we are going to wrap it up. We've got about 45 minutes until kickoff. Get your lineup set. Make sure you go check out our rankings and all our work at sportsgamblingpodcast.com. I'm at FF Bourbon Dude, Dave at Dynasty Dorks, Bruni at SGPNJB, and Adam at Adam Pelletier French. Pelletier.
And don't forget to go check out the SGP pregame show starting now on the main feed on YouTube and Spaces.
Get her done. All right. Good luck in week 3 and cheers.